Well, hello. My name is Bradley Wilson, and I'm here today to talk to you about the copy editing contest with the University Interscholastic League. This is a contest that we started a few years ago because, well, quite frankly, we saw that there was a need. Everyone needs a copy editor. Walmart needs a copy editor. In fact, they could just read their sign out loud. Associate, will you call when they're ready? We want to ensure all customers have their privacy. Trader Joe's needs a copy editor. KPRC needs a copy editor. And it's true, social media had a little bit of fun with this one. Those bananas, I don't know how much they do really to prevent spread of the virus, but certainly social media had fun with it. We can have Ritos. And another television station, mask and hand sanitizer handed out. Undeserved neighborhoods enrichment? I think they meant underserved. So, one of the first things that we had to decide when we created this contest was, how do you spell copy editor? So we did like all good copy editors do, and we went to the style book. Copy editor, 2 words, seldom a formal title. Also, copy editing, 2 words, and copy edit, 2 words. And let me tell you where I'm coming from with this contest. Certainly it is a contest that creates people with marketable skills that you should put on your resume and put on your LinkedIn profile, because you have attention to detail. You've learned to work as part of a team. You have the ability to meet deadlines. You know how to manage your time. You know how to solve problems. And you've become culturally aware in a way that people that don't compete in this contest haven't. Lots of benefits there for everybody competing. But let me also emphasize what it's not. It's not a headline writing contest. UIL already has one of those. It's not a current events contest. UIL already has one of those too. And it's not a spelling contest. And yeah, UIL has one of those too, and so do a lot of other people. So what it is a contest that focuses on editing, including current events, including spelling, but also grammar, punctuation, style, including sentence structure, passive voice, word choice, including at the highest level, media law and ethics. When I'm teaching editing, I break my editing down into sort of 3 levels. The high level editing, that's the big stuff. These are the things that can put you in jail, cost you your job, all sorts of problems. Questions like, are there legal issues? Libel? Did the reporter interview the right people? Did the reporter interview enough people? A one-source story is not good enough. Did the reporter ask the right questions? Why? Does the story cover all sides? And is the story in context? For example, if you go back a few years and you look at the Ebola scare in North Texas, this is a story that in my opinion was extremely overplayed, as your odds of getting Ebola were slim to none. But if you were living in Dallas when that nurse was exposed to it, you would have thought that everybody and their brother was going to be getting Ebola. If you take Rolling Stone story a few years ago about a rape on campus, made headlines, the story did. Turns out the problem was the entire story was based on one source that falsified everything. A one source story is never enough. And look what it forced Rolling Stone to do. Some would say it almost cost them the business, but they had to retract the whole thing. We are officially retracting a rape on campus. We are also committing ourselves to a series of recommendations about journalistic practices that are spelled out in the report. We would like to apologize to our readers. It's one thing to apologize, but think about those members of the Phi Kappa Psi fraternity and the University of Virginia whose lives were irreparably damaged by this report that was fake. It wasn't real because editors didn't do their job. At the highest level also is some level of cultural literacy. What's going on in the world today? And I ask my students today if they've watched Star Wars, and few of them raise their hands. I'm like, oh, it's so become part of our culture as so many other things have. Here's a lead on a story in the Austin American-Statesman. Yes, it will be 20 degrees cooler Tuesday than it was Monday, but it's not slice open a tauntaun like Luke Skywalker in The Empire Strikes Back cold. Now, those of you that are Star Wars fans, you think for a second, and you realize it wasn't Luke Skywalker who sliced open the tauntaun, it was Han Solo. So in an embarrassing moment, the Austin American-Statesman had to issue a correction. A story about Olson's cold weather on Tuesday, B1 incorrectly identified the character who sliced open a tauntaun to say warm in The Empire Strikes Back. It was Han Solo. So there are all levels of cultural literacy. Being aware of what's going on in the world around you will help you be a better editor. Then there's sort of the mid-level editing. Does the story flow well? Has the reporter made good use of transitions? In fact, it wouldn't hurt you to pull out a list of transition words and just start becoming oh so familiar with those. Don't just forget them after you take in your last English class. Are your sentences structured properly? Has the writer made appropriate use of passive voice? And don't let anybody tell you that there is never a time for passive voice. There certainly is. Is vocabulary appropriate for the audience? Is the math correct? In fact, anytime you see a number, you should question it. Is the geography correct? Anytime you see a map, you should question it. If you look up at the top, statistics show that teenage pregnancy drops off significantly after age 25. I can say with 100% certainty that teenage pregnancy drops off significantly after age 19 because you're no longer a teenager. And I can say with 100% certainty that Egypt is not in between Syria and Iran. And I can say with 100% certainty the yearbook in McKinney a few years ago that referred to students as mentally retarded should not have done so. These are all things the editors should have caught. When back to cultural sensitivity in that issue at Mesquite High School, look it up. Look it up in the style book. It's that simple. But really, as an editor, you should have a sort of a mindset to avoid sexist writing, to avoid being insensitive. And again, to have that cultural awareness. All they had to do was look it up. Mentally disabled, intellectually disabled, developmentally disabled. The preferred terms, not mentally retarded. Or disabled, handicapped. In general, do not describe an individual as disabled or handicapped unless it is clearly pertinent to a story. And some of these sexist terms that get into our writing periodically, such as fireman, but the preferred term to describe a person who fights a fire is a firefighter, not mailman, a mail or letter carrier. And then just check out the style book with all the new sections that they have on LGBT community and all of the other pieces of our writing that sometimes slip in that probably shouldn't. And then there's the low-level editing. These are the ones that maybe spell check would catch, but maybe not. Driving on snot and ice, not snow and ice. Buckle up, slow down, and drink and drive. Not the advice I give my students and my friends. Or maybe you're Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education under the Trump administration, on her first tweet, that somebody took a red pen to it. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, and style are all low-level editing errors that can kind of make you use a laughing stock. For example, Yogi Bear, a Hall of Fame catcher. I don't know how Yogi Bear would feel about that, but I suspect that Yogi Berra, who was a New York Yankees Hall of Fame catcher, wouldn't feel so great. Spell check, probably caught it. Not Yogi Berra, Yogi Bear, it said, and somebody pushed it out on the web in their endeavor to be first and fast, and they sacrificed accuracy, and they became the laughing stock of the country. Or if you look at the inauguration photo of Donald Trump, can you find the mistake? Can you find the mistake? Look for it. Look for it. Look at that second two, T-O. So easy to miss. So easy to miss. The official inauguration photo of President Donald Trump. One typo. A bill would allow cannibals tasting room. I suspect what they meant was cannabis. Let's talk a little bit about the style book. The style book that we'll be using for this contest is the current edition of the style book, no matter what year you happen to be taking this contest in. So in 2020, the Associated Press decided to only issue major print updates to their style book every 2 years. So the 2020 style book goes from 2020, fall of 2020, through the spring of 2021, through the fall of 21, to the spring of 22. Right? And then we'll see when they come out with their next edition. Usually it's in May. And so probably in the fall of 2022, we'll have a new edition. You might want to follow the AP Style Book on Twitter. They give a lot of updates. Check it out, right? Something worth watching. See what the updates are out there, because it turns out that they come up with hundreds of updates every year. Right? So you want to stay current on it. But again, the official version that we'll be using will be the 2020 through 2022 version of the style book, not the 2012, not the 27. In fact, you can find archived versions of the style book on the AP Style Book website. We'll be using the current edition of the style book, no matter what year it is. What we won't be using are all those other styles that are out there. The American Psychological Association, Chicago style, or Modern Language Association. We're using Associated Press style and the current edition of that. Occasionally we get some questions about the contest, and here's one of the questions that we sometimes get. Are the contestants able to use the AP style book during the contest? No. In fact, if you look at the contest rules and regulations, you'll see that the AP style book can be used in news, feature, editorial, and headline contests, but it does not say that it can be used in the copy editing contest. Therefore, it can't. We also get questions about what symbols we'll be using. There's a plethora of symbols out there, and depending on when you learned and where you learned AP style, or when you learned editing, you might have learned one version of symbols proofreading and another version of symbols for copy editing. In fact, what we say is that you must use clearly understood editing symbols, and there is no standard according to the UIL for this contest about the symbols you must use. As long as it's clear to the judges, any symbol is okay. But if it's not clear to the judges, then it's up to the judges to decide how to recognize or not that individual. So let's take a look at a test. Here's part one of a test, and you'll see that it's basically multiple choice with 2 choices. And you follow the instructions and you circle the correct response, and there's 15 of these. Right? So it's easy to look at number 6. It's easy to see the difference between she and her. Right? So you analyze the sentence, you decide which one's correct, and you circle, hopefully, her. So you look at the answer key and you see that answer number 6 is her. Now, if you're going through the test and you find a mistake, please let us know. We acknowledge that there is subjectivity in all editing, and we want to make sure we get the right answers out there. Part 2 of the editing test is a little bit more, even more subjective. In each of the 5 statements that is given there are 4 and only 4 errors. Your task is to, using clearly understood copy editing symbols, to mark those 4 errors. If you mark more than 4 errors, the judge will only consider the first 4 that you mark. So you go through and find the 4 errors and mark them using clearly understood symbols and move on. A note to the judges and advisors, often I'll put notes on the left-hand side, particularly if something is a little confusing or ambiguous. And then there's part 3. Part 3 will only be used to break ties, but do spend a little bit of time with part 3, even if it's only a minute or 2 at the end of the test after you've been secure about the first 2 parts. Part 3 might include some high-level editing, some libel situations or otherwise. So look over it from a big picture. Then look at the mid-level picture. Does it flow? Then look at the low-level stuff. Go through and mark it. Check the order of paragraphs. Check the sources. Have they used the right number of sources? And again, on the left-hand side to the judges and advisors, if there are questions or comments, I'll put them on the left-hand side under the notes for the judges. You might want to look over some other copy editing tests. Some are online. This is from the Society for Editing, or ACES. Right? And they've got a bunch of quizzes up there, but there are lots. Right? So let's end by looking at one of the questions that might be on the test. Their homes are in the northern port city of Haifa, one of the areas that was or were hardest hit. Now, if you just look at it quickly and read it, one of the areas you think, oh, take out the prepositional phrase, the subject is one was hardest hit, right? But indeed, the correct answer is were. Right? The problem is the word that, and then you get that relative clause in there, right? The subject of the relative clause is plural and therefore needs a plural verb. In sentences like this, of course, it's always better to flop it around. one of the areas that were hardest hit, Hoffa was one. Now, let me be frank about this kind of question. These are the hard ones. These are the questions that are going to be more likely to be on the test at the state level than at the invitational level. And then I do try to make the test get harder as we move up from invitational to district, region to state. So do expect some of the hard stuff because I know you're all going to make it to state. Along the way, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. My name is Bradley Wilson, and my email address is there on the screen, bradleywilson08@gmail.com. Or, of course, you can always get in touch with Jeannie in the UIL office, Jeannie Acton, jacton@uiltexas.org. I wish all of you the best of luck in competing in the copy editing contest this year, and I look forward to seeing you in Austin and State in person in May. Thanks so much.